Welcome to A Drink of Wisdom. With Jay Wise, I'm your host, Cody Ward. Thank you for spending some of your time with us tonight. As a reminder to all our listeners, besides being on all your favorite podcast platforms, A Drink of Wisdom is also on YouTube with each show segment available. Head on over. If you like what you hear, we would appreciate your subscription. We're still without Drink this week, man, so it's just you and me again. How's it going?
Yeah, it's tough out in these streets, without we need a little more diversity up in here, I must say. But we miss you, Drink. Shout out to you. And we look forward to having you back next week. But in the meantime, the NBA bubble, we're about to get into some of these things. Fantastic day, special Thursday edition of the show. No drink today, but the beer and the wisdom. We about to do it. Let's go.
I'll hold it down. In episode 84, we lay out the state of the bubbled Eastern Conference. Odell Beckham says some stuff, and the college football coaches poll is out. And if I told you we're bubbling the Eastern Conference, we're going to talk about the Western Conference as well. So let's see how things are shaping up as we're about halfway through the NBA regular season restart. The Los Angeles Lakers remain atop of the conference after securing the number one overall seed for the first time since 2010. The Clippers and Nuggets and some other teams are all vying for those 2 through 7 seeds, while a race for the 8th seed has devolved into a 5-team dumpster fire. Players have stood out, teams have surged or disappointed, and like I said, we still got half the games to go. So, Jay, what are your most interesting storylines from the first week that was in the Western Conference?
So when you say interesting, I'm going to go to that dumpster fire, which I think it's 6 teams that are actually involved. Phoenix.
Oh, right. Yep.
I can't believe I'm starting with Phoenix, but they're 4-0 right now, so they've actually gained some ground. Memphis, as you know, is in a complete free fall. No Jaren Jackson with the meniscus tear, big deal. We talked about their schedule when that came out. They had 2 winnable games up front, then a pretty pivotal third game. That would be against New Orleans. And then after that, and you read it off earlier when we was on live, it is pretty easy to envision them not winning a single game at this point. So nothing has been decided. But at this point, about halfway through this bubble, every team is still in play. Nothing has been decided as far as this 8 seed nor the 9 seed. Everybody is within 2.5 games of each other. You have the Grizzlies still in 8th, 1 game ahead of Portland, 2 games up on the Spurs. I think the Suns are now a game and a half back, if I got that correct.
They just went final, yeah. So yeah,
and then Sacramento and New Orleans are 2.5 back and in last. If you remember, I was of the mindset I had Memphis and New Orleans. I thought they'd be 8-9, and we'd see them in the 8-9 playoff thing that the NBA and their infinite wisdom came up with doing. We know how ridiculous that
is.
The
NBA thought that's who they see too. So for what it's worth.
This was part of the whole, and we don't have any evidence of this, but we have suspicions that this was all part of the a coup to get the Pelicans into the 8th seed so we could see Zion and LeBron in the first round. And I don't see it happening right now. New Orleans, they of course they beat Memphis, like we said, after, we didn't expect them to beat the Clippers. They gave away a game against the Jazz, but we knew after those first 2 games, the schedule was going to get infinitely easier. So they beat Memphis. And then today they get crushed they give up 140 to Sacramento, who, oh, by the way, had not won a game yet in this bubble. They gave up 49 in the first quarter. And then that was the question we had all along. Like, would you play? I'm being serious. Go look at it.
Sorry.
49 points in the first quarter.
Oh, no.
Bogdanovich lit him up for 35. Not the Utah Bogdanovich. I think this is actually Bogdan Bogdanovich as opposed to Bojan. I get them confused. De'Aaron Fox lit him up for 30. Our old friend Harrison Barnes, 22 points. The list goes on and on. We know they don't defend the New Orleans Pelicans, and it appears that that's going to be their downfall. But there's nothing has been decided. We're looking at Portland. You were high on Portland. Well, you had the belief that Portland might be a factor in all this. They're a game back. Oh my gosh, Yusuf Nurkic is playing. So we don't have to hear about the return of Nurkic. He's actually playing, and he's been playing quite well, I believe. And of course, Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum. Some of these things with the Blazers, I don't even know what took them so long. No Nurkic or no Nurkic. I don't know why we're in the 11th hour trying to make this run so we can get bounced in the first round. But to me, this is the most interesting story, how muddled and ridiculous this thing is. Everybody's going to be within 4 games. It's perfectly reasonable that could happen. But again, it's only the 8-9 team, so it looks like we're going to have an 8-9 thing. I can't imagine at this point. It's hard to envision Memphis being one of those teams as they continue to spiral out of control. San Antonio could be the team, and again, New Orleans, as lackluster as they're playing, there's still time for them. I'll tell you one thing. If Phoenix somehow flops around and winds up in the 8th seed, somehow, some way, I'm never living it down, and I'm not even going to acknowledge them. I'm surprised. I'm shocked myself that I even started this segment talking about the Phoenix Suns. I haven't watched a second of Phoenix Suns basketball all season. I'm still not going to watch them because they don't have any nationally televised games. Well, they might have a couple NBA TV games. I'm not watching them. The only way I watch them is that they meet the Lakers in the first round and go ahead, everybody pull up them brooms, get the sweep going. But that's the most interesting thing. And I know you're going to touch on this. Denver's somewhat interesting, and you're going to talk about Michael Porter, but his emergence makes them interesting. They don't have Jamal Murray right now. They don't have Gary Harris right now, so they're missing those 2 guys in the starting lineup. But if you add those guys back in, combined with what we're getting from Michael Porter, they become pretty interesting. And I would tell you, as far as that second-tier group of Western Conference teams that we always refer to after the Lakers and Clippers, they, to me, would be a clear leader of that group. And I would also I'm still going to throw Houston up there with them at about their level, right below them, because it's just Westbrook and Harden. None of those other teams have a duo like that, so that's why I go Houston. You know how I feel about Utah. Utah's fraudulent. I'm not – the Pelicans – again, the Pelicans, you know that first game in the bowl, the Pelicans blew that. They gave that game to them. It was gifted, gift-wrapped, Salvation Army type game. OKC, I got to tell you, I've been impressed with OKC. I like what I'm seeing. No Schroeder, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he is something to watch. Chris Paul's playing very well. His mid-range game, it can't be denied. It's something to behold. He's playing quite well. And again, I told you this. I think we talked about it last week. The Lakers-Clippers game. I wasn't going to make no real, broad-based definitive conclusions from that game. I'm not sure if anything that we see from them in this stretch is meaningful. Because the Lakers are going through something with their backcourt right now as they continue to integrate the likes of J.R. Smith and Dion Waiters, who, oh, by the way, I've been somewhat impressed with Dion Waiters. I got to admit, I got to be objective here. We're not doing some of the things that we was doing down in Miami. I'm not going to get into it all that much. I haven't liked what I've seen from J.R. Smith. But, hey, if we could get one of those guys playing somewhat well, it'd be a great benefit to the Lakers. So I like that. And, of course, the Clippers are not themselves right now because – no Lou Williams with whatever things we're doing with Chicken. And then Montrezl Harrell, he's not, Montrezl Harrell's not available now. But when those guys, I got to believe, when the playoffs are here, they'll be here and they'll get things together. And I still think, regardless, Lakers, Clippers, Western Conference Finals, that's ultimately where we'll be.
Yeah, just real quick for the Lakers, just remember they do have that 1 seed locked up. So, LeBron's already being kind of rested tonight. They're saying it's a groin, but kind of like with LeBron, that could be just, we're just going to put him on the shelf. So, I don't think you're going to see a ton of effort from some of these top seeds that pretty much have it locked up mathematically. They're really kind of feeling it out.
And that's another thing. And you can tell some of these teams, and the Lakers and Clippers among them, some of it effort, some of it not having all your personnel at their disposal. But just real quick, and I was complimentary of LeBron last week with how he finished that game against the Clippers. I don't think you can finish a basketball game much better than he did. But I got to admit, LeBron's not playing well right now, particularly shooting the basketball. We get 19.3 points a game in this bubble on 42% shooting, 27% from 3, and 68% from the line. Now, all of that's terrible, especially compared to his usual standards. We know the free throw shooting's always been somewhat questionable, so that's not to be concerned about. But 42%, that's terrible from the floor. And then 3-point shooting, we don't need to see you below 30%. I don't think this is a big concern, but it's something to at least be paying attention to and be mindful of. I think it gets this corrected ultimately, but he's having some struggles right now, I got to admit. And then one more player note, the minutes of Zion. They've amped it up the past 2 games. Congratulations to them. I don't know what they were doing the first 2 games with the 15 minutes and 14 minutes, but they've gotten up to 25 and 22 minutes. I just hope I really hope he survives, this difficult workload that they're putting upon him. The rookie, all of these different things, minutes restrictions. When the NBA has like formulated this plot to get you in the 8th seed, and not Alvin Gentry. I cannot. There's no way I can formulate a reasonable explanation of where Alvin Gentry is making this call. David Griffin, paging David Griffin. Can we get Zion in the game for more than 25 minutes, please?
Yeah, that's if you're talking about bizarre storylines, that's got to be number one. But yeah, one of my biggest takeaways so far, it really is the Denver Nuggets situation. So you have one of these fringe contenders, like you said, a team that's sitting just outside the Lakers Clippers. And we've said about with the Nuggets and a couple other teams, like they're probably a piece away from being a true, no kidding, absolutely any day, any night, could beat the Lakers, could beat the Clippers, could be the number one seed. But they may have it right now, and that is in one Michael Porter Jr., 6'10", 14th overall pick, reminding everyone why he was widely considered a number one pick before injury. And Denver's 2-1 in their bubble restart, right? So, and again, they're chasing the Clippers, who now have been a little more vulnerable in the restart. And he has had some monster games. So in the last 2 games, Porter Jr. has scored 37 and 30 respectively, while shooting a combined 23 of 35 from the field and 9 of 15 from 3. Those 67 points are the most in a 2-game stretch for a rookie in Denver Nuggets history. And when you add in the rebounds, you have the first 30 and 10 back-to-back game for a rookie since Blake Griffin in 2011. So without the services of Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Will Barton, kind of some of the guys you mentioned, the Nuggets have had to look to other sort of options to score. And Porter Jr. has been that spark. And primarily he's played his best ball off the bench, where he's kind of been that primary scoring option again. When he first started reintegrating with the team, with the starters, he struggled a little bit more because he isn't the first or even really the second option with the Nuggets, especially when they're at full health. But on the bench where he's the guy again, that's just like he used to play in high school and college, and he's right back to it. But his chemistry with guys like Jokic is improving, and he could really be a dangerous weapon for a team that is looking for that last piece. And someone giving you 37 and 15 every other game, I mean, that might be enough. I also find it really interesting that resurgence of Carmelo Anthony in Portland, and they're one of those teams you're talking about in this big muddy race for the 8th seed. And the collective basketball world owes this man a bit of an apology. We're not getting vintage Denver Melo, but man, this dude's out here. He's not just playing well, right? Like he's averaging better stats than he does in the regular season. He's up to 16.3 points, 7 rebounds per game while shooting 50% from 3. That's all up from his normal regular season stats. But he's out here like making meaningful shots for the Blazers. They're 2-1 in this bubble. They're also, again, in that playoff race. But in both their victories, he's hit big shots late in the game. He hit 2 threes that sent the Memphis game to overtime. And he also hit 2 free throws in that game with 12 seconds on the clock to seal it up. And he's also hit another big 3 in one of the other games they played in one of their victories. So he's like hitting these big shots down the stretch. And if you're talking about a team that needs to reemerge in the 8th seed race, it's pretty cool that Carmelo is not only on a team that's making a playoff push, but he's also playing these meaningful minutes when most people said he was washed up, he couldn't play anymore, and that was just that. So that's just really cool to see, I think. And finally, I'm really interested to see how the standings are going to shake out in the Western Conference as a whole. We had the Lakers number 1, they're locked up, they're put away, right? And we've already talked about the 8th seed clown fiesta down there. But in your 2 through 7 seeds, there's a lot that can change. The Clippers are just a half game ahead of Denver with 5 games to go, roughly. Dallas is probably your 7th seed. They're a game or 2 behind 6th place. But, if some things changed, I would think that the Clippers would probably handle Dallas better than Denver would. I feel like Denver may have some matchup troubles with Luka and Porzingis, who are playing great basketball. They're not the Dallas's problem and haven't been. It's the other dudes that are kind of messing around. But even from there, like, you look at a team like the Jazz, can they make up the 2 games on Denver? Can they draw Houston? Do they even want to draw Houston? Would they like to play maybe OKC is a better matchup than Houston? I think Houston would run over Utah. Talk about sweep, but OKC might be a better matchup. So when you look at the last 4 or 5 games of the stretch, you got to remember that all these teams 2 through 7, even if we all know these are our top 7 playoff teams, there's a lot that shakes out in between here. And these matchups in the first round could be a huge difference in what we see in the playoffs as the games go on.
Yeah, and to your point about seeding, because think about it, seeding is a little less important now because there's no home field and no home court involved. But if you actually pay attention to some of these things, and I'm primarily looking at 2 through 6 is what I'm looking at because that's where it's pretty muddled. It's pretty muddled.
Right.
The Clippers and Rockets, there's only a 2.5 game separation between seeds 2 through 6 right now. And really, there's not a huge difference. Let's say the Clippers, I'm looking at them right now. If they fall to, if the Nuggets catch them, and there's only a half game back right now, so they could, it doesn't matter a whole lot. But I would say if the Clippers hold steady and get 2, they play the Mavericks. Not that the Mavericks are pushovers by any stretch of imagination, but I think that's a 5-game series. I think the Clippers beat them in 5. But if you drop down to 6, think about it. Because when the Clippers when we get to the playoffs, you got to think some of these guys just getting back in the flow. There's going to be some chemistry things they have to work to on the fly.
Yep.
And if you drop down to the 3 seed, whoever you get, whether it's the Jazz, the Thunder, or Rockets, you're going to be in for a fight right away. None of the, I mean, I'm probably being a little bit too kind to Utah because I don't think they're going to be much of a fight for anyone in that range. I think they go home in the first round regardless. But especially if you're looking at Houston right away or OKC, those teams ain't playing. I mean, and you're gonna have to come out there with some force and some intensity, and you're gonna have to be playing well right away. You're not gonna be able to afford some slip ups. I mean, and it's been this way the whole season with the Clippers. For whatever reason, whether it's Paul George being in and out of the lineup, Patrick Beverly's missed time, they've had other guys be injured. Now you got the bubble thing where Harrell's away from a team, Lou Williams quarantining, all these different things. So I think it'd be a great benefit for the Clippers to keep that 2 seed. And then there's one other team that I think is interesting in this regard. Houston's a team to pay attention to because I think Houston, I would probably what I've seen from the Nuggets, I would say Houston's your 4th best team right now. Wherever Houston falls at, if Houston falls, the Lakers, I'm going to tell you, I think the Lakers would like to see Houston stay at 6. At 6, and here's why. If the Rockets move up to 4 and 5, the Lakers are probably going to see Houston in the second round. And the Rockets have given them some problems with their small ball lineup. I think the Lakers are perfectly capable of handling that. But I think the Lakers, what they'd like to see is Houston stay at 6 and wind up on the Clippers side of the bracket. Because we know the Clippers are going to take care of the Rockets. We've seen it. They can downsize, they can play small ball and be better about it. And oh, by the way, their small ball means you got Kawhi and Paul George, and good luck, James Harden and Russell Westbrook. You're not doing whatever you want to do against those guys. Oh, by the way, sprinkle a little Patrick Beverly too. So that's the seeding things I'm looking at. I think the Lakers would prefer that the Rockets go somewhere else, even though AD would probably love to see him because he going to get 40 and 20 a night if he wanted to. But that's the interesting things as far as seeding out west that I'm looking at.